this video, I'm going to go over a few of my airbrushes that I use. Of course, this is not all that are required to paint models, but these are just ones I've collected over the years, and I will go over the ones I specifically use most often. But this is just going to be a quick talk about my brushes, and I'm going to answer a few questions at the end that you have kindly posted to my question on Instagram. Again, don't need all these brushes to paint. This is just what I have, and I'm going to be sharing just what I use. It's not going to be a tutorial video on how to use the airbrushes, just an intro of what I've got going on. And at one point in the video, I will go over what accessories I use on my airbrushes, holders, stands, quick fittings, etc. Alright, so let's get this started. I'm going to read some of the questions that you all thankfully wrote down for me to help me out, help me think about what to do in this video. But first I'm just going to talk about my brushes a little bit, and it's not really going to be painting demos or anything like that. I'm going to leave that to a Taco Builder or Frosted Snow or Lincoln Wright paint on plastic. I have trouble filming those in the tight space I have in the spray booth. But mostly I'm just going to talk about what I have and what I use and what I don't use. So here's the first part coming at you. Neo for Iwata, TRN N2. Iwata HPC Plus. The Badger Renegade Chrome, 0.2 needle installed. Alright, so this is everything I have. Now I don't use all of these all the time. I'll talk about right now which ones I use the most first, so let's move away the Paasches. Those. The Gundam marker one, I'll talk about that a little bit, that'll be really funny. Move away the Soltar, acrylic, that one. Alright, so what we're left with now, I'll bring all these other ones back. This is what I use the most. So, this is a recent, this one I haven't had for that long, but I've just been using it for everything from primer. This is just for primer and top coat. Now I'll still go with the 0.3 for top because this is a 0.5 needle going on here, but this is the Neo Iwata TRN2. So the reason, you can get a lot of, it doesn't have to be Iwata for this. What I like about this for primer is the trigger, because with priming you're just doing the same thing, repetition over and over and over and over again. And with a feed like this, when I worked, I'd always get problems between here and here, and my finger would go numb a little bit, like the fingertip. So doing this repetition every time for priming was killing me, and it just wasn't necessary. So big coverage on this with a 0.5 needle, easy to clean, easy to maintain. Side feed can actually be swapped to both sides, I believe I have the fittings for that, so you could put the side feed on the other. So I'm going to get into that question later, because someone did ask what's the difference between siphon, side feed, and gravity feed. I'll talk about that, but really this is the reason I use this is for the pistol grip, because it's just so much more comfortable for spraying primer after primer after primer. So I'll put this link down in the description, but for that, my favorite is so far the Neo from Iwata. There could be a lot of other things, and this is not that expensive, but when it comes down to Iwatas, it's more, there are lots of airbrushes out there, but I feel like there's certain components in here that will last longer. And that's the thing, if you get a $30 airbrush, will it last a year? Will it last you 10 years? Might. Will it last you a minute? Possibly. My Iwatas I've had for 10 years. This one 10 years, this one a little bit less, but for the most part, Iwata, as far as I've only had to fix needles, and the needles have always been damaged by me doing something wrong. I've never replaced internal components, and I barely clean these. I mean, I should clean them better, but I don't. So it's just a testament to the structure. Now, I haven't had many cheap airbrushes, don't know how long those will last, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So next one, after we got the primer down, we have the HPC Plus. Now, I have another one that I used to use. I'm going to bring this up only because it's the HPC N. Now, what I like about this, I've devoted this just to acrylic. See it there so I don't forget? But I do like this because it has a, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it's the HPC H. Now, I don't think these exist anymore, so we might have bad luck finding it, but I like this because it's a pressure regulator up here. So instead of having to go all the way to the line, I can sit there and spray, and I adjust, spray, and I lower my pressure right through here. So this was always really fun. I might end up taking this out of acrylic since now I have the Madworks. I might re-clean this and just have it as a backup lacquer brush. But I do like this one, the HPCH, because of the pressure valve up here. We use this in makeup. I was using this when I did makeup as I can lower the pressure and I can do spatter or like fine lines really up close. So this is a 0.3 needle in there as well. So back to this, the main one, the HPC. It's HPC Plus. Now, I guess you can get the clips or something like that for a little cheaper. These run a little bit more expensive, and I did upgrade the tips on all these to be crown tips. Now, you ask why they're crown tip as opposed to round tip like that. Now, with this, when you get up really close to something, you got air bouncing back at you, and it's going to cup inside there and it has nowhere to go. So it causes a lot of irregularities, can cause more dry tip, can cause a, spatter back. With this crown tip, when you're up close, the air has somewhere to escape. So this just allows you to go closer. Now, I want to leave you a little trick though. If you don't want to, if you think, what's really putting a crown tip on going to do? Well, let me find one that actually comes off a little easier. Always have pliers. Let me get those. Yeah. So also one thing, always need a nice set of, I brought these from, I think this was from my mom's house. I've had these around forever. I love these. Best set of little pliers. I know there's a better name for them, and someone's going to tell me in the comments what the name for them are. It's like, they're just pliers. I just call everything on this line pliers. Plumbers, something. But, so. Lightlet. So the trick could be, if you don't have the crown tip, you can just take off the safety guard, basically. But now you have an exposed needle. This is where you have to be very careful. With makeup, we used to do this to get it really close, but if you got too close, boom, giving someone a tattoo. But this is how you could remove the need for having a crown tip, but now you have needle exposed, which can cause lots of damage if you drop it. So if you want to get up there with the fine lines and not worrying about the back spray and get close, go ahead and just take the front guard off while you're using it, but make sure you carefully, super careful, because you ding that tip, you can hone it, rechange it, but every time you sand down a needle, you're changing the size of it. So it's never going to be the same after a few sandings. So you can keep sanding it down like everyone says and does, but you're taking away material, which means you're changing the needle shape, which means you're altering the size. It might not matter that much, but trick on that at least is just to take the front off. But so the HPC Plus, I use this for almost all laying down the base paints. I go back and forth between this one. I've devoted straight to lacquer. I think it's a fine brush for base painting down. It operates, similarly to how you would for the 0.3 for the Madworks. But again, I feel like I don't have the Madworks around long enough to really test them out. I've had this for 10 years and been using it for almost 10 years, and I haven't had any problems, not a single problem with it, except for needles that I've damaged. But this is what I use for almost all my up close for base painting out, because I can get pretty fine down there, lower the pressure. But when I really need to get up close, if I'm doing black basing, we come to the next one. That's when we start moving into badger territory. I feel Iwata gets real expensive when they go with the really fine, like this is a 0.2 needle. So this is a hyper fine needle on the Renegade Chrome. This is from Badger. I have another one from Badger here I'll show you in a second. But I think what I love about Badger, the company, I mean, US based, so it's easier for me to get, but they have been really, as far as precision wise and cost, they're lower cost and they're really high precision. Like, I've never had a trouble with the Renegade. Nice big cup on top, gravity fed. Renegade Chrome. They have a nice open tip right there too, so you still got to be careful with it. A lot of times they'll come with a guard. I pretty much lost mine, but you can be safe with it. And the other one from, I haven't used this one in a while, only because it's harder to find the needles on it, and the cup's a little shallow for my taste. But this one has no guard whatsoever. So the Sotar has no guard on it at all, and this is a 0.2 needle tip on it. So this, I always keep the metal guard on. I don't use this that much because of the amount of space. I don't have a lot of, I need more paint if we're using this. So this is a very good brush, but lacking in paint size. So that's why I didn't bring it out as the main one. But these are the my three main brushes: primer, general base painting, and then when it comes up for details, if I need to get really close in, if I'm pre-shading, or if I'm black basing, where I spray down my primer first, and then I come in and do basically a shade from the center out, like a cell shading. So if I was painting this, I would start painting from the center and moving my way out towards the edges. I'd use this because I can lower the pressure put the pressure way down and close this really quick, and I can get real tight and do fine lines. I won't have a bunch of overspray, back spray. So I'll use the chrome when I really need to get close. Or if a lot of times I do this, I don't really tell this that often when I post the pictures, but a lot of times I just won't mask an area if I know I can get in and just airbrush it. So I'll lower the pressure, use this, and I'll be very careful and basically spray at an angle that's away from the other part. So a lot of times when you see my masked areas, some of them aren't masked. They're just, I got in there with the brush and I was able to paint carefully and not overspray to the other side. So that's why I like the Renegade Chrome for that. I can get in there and paint a panel red. If instead of spending time masking it off and do that, I can just be very careful and slow, and I've already got a place painted. It's really nice. At least that. So those are the three. Those are main guys. These are the ones I like using for everything. Let's talk a little bit about the other one, and then we'll talk about the questions next. So we already talked about, I have talked about both these MadWorks brushes in the is another video, so I'll just leave a link here. You can go check those out. I'm still finding them pretty great. Have no real issues with them as of yet. I think you can still get away with most of these. I'm waiting for them to come out with a 0.2 needle size, and then I'll have a nice set of these to really try forever. But go see the video if you're interested. So, next ones. These are a little bit odd. Now, in the effects industry, makeup industry, we have Paasches for almost everything. They're so simple in their design. So, it is a siphon feed. This is the only difference now that I'm just going to show you. See if I have one that actually fit. I haven't cleaned these out in a while, so bear with me. If they're a little dirty and hard to... I use them mostly for... I'll show you my work brush in a second. Right. So, again, siphon feed. So what happens is we're drawing the paint through here, through the needle, and up to the tip. So the airflow is coming directly. It's a very simple design. So airflow in, directly out the front, and on the way out, it pulls the paint up with it. So why we like these for effects and makeup is you have a bunch of different tips I can put on. Like right now I have a number 1 on there. I can go from 1 to 5. So 1, 3, I believe it's 3, 4, and 5. I can't remember if they skip a 4. Seems like 4 was, maybe skip a 3. I don't know. But the point is, these come out and are exchanged really easily. You just change these 2 tips, and that's also why they're so easy to clean. There's only one O-ring right here that you have to be careful about solvents. But Paasches, if you want to try them out, you can probably get one for about 40 bucks. They're a little expensive when you get all the parts together, and they've kind of jumped up in price. These used to be dead cheap. That's why you'd always have like 5 or 6 of them. But it's really simple because the only part that's really metal, this is the airbrush housing right here. Now, I do like these. I've tried to use them halfway unsuccessful and successfully with top coats and priming. They're just a little bit trickier with the siphon feed. I like them if you're going to be, I mean, for painting, general painting. Let's say you're painting your dioramas. Instead of pulling out your Paasche, instead of pulling out your Iwatas or your Madworks or your Badger, just have a Paasche nearby for this because they're so easy to clean out. It's just pop, pop. And these components just, you're done. Like this is just the metal housing. Then you just, unscrew the tip there. They're just a very simple, easy to clean machine and brush. So, I mean, you could try one of those, just the Paasche H. Give that a go. See if you're interested in their company. Their dual actions are okay, but they kind of fall into the, they tend to not be very precise all the time. They'll vary up and down, but their dual actions, if you want to check out the Paasche company, go ahead and see how that works out for you. But I just like them because they are so simple, and the interchanging of the needles is very easy. Like just, this is number 1, and you just pop in a number 5, which I think is there. Yes, there's number 5 written right there. And just little things like that. It's a very simple design, just single, just spray. There's no pull. It's just lower, up, down the pressure all you want, but it's just a siphon feed. Use this for, maybe actually this would probably be a good brush for the wax release if you're spraying it. I should have cleaned one of these out and tried it, but I want to show you something funny with the Paasches before I go to the next one, so give me a second. So here's something funny. I'll get back to these in a second. This is my Paasche from work. This is all bald cap. This is around, like, what I've done is, I can only show you this because of how filthy it is, but this, it's a testament to how long this brush will work and last with almost no maintenance. I almost never open this thing up, and this has been years. Like, that used to be fully, maybe half an inch bigger. Like, that hole has just been cracked. That's all bald cap material, vinyl for making appliances. See some of it come off there, but it just shows you how, like, this will work fine. I'll pop some acetone in there and then open it up a little, and this whole thing will work fine in 5 minutes. So it's just showing as a testament to the what's the word I'm looking for? It's like something that's, it's not bulletproof, but this will take a beating and it will keep on going. Not a lot can destroy unless someone drops it on the tip, and then you just buy a new, needle, basically. But just want to show you that fun thing. I mean, it's a workhorse. That's it. Workhorse, like a beast of burden, pack mule. So yeah, fun stuff like that. Little fun quick regulator too. These, I don't know if they make these types anymore. Found this a long time ago, but I like this because I can hook it into the shop when I go. So I'll talk about the other ones now and stop messing around. So we already talked about the Paasches. Now, the Gundam marker pen, I think, is hilarious. I've used it a few times. It does work. You gotta, tweak it a lot to get it to really spray and to work correctly. I've used it. It has been successful, but the problem is I haven't researched enough the fittings down here to get it to hook up to just a regular compressor. I have to spend a little bit more time making sure the threading's right, but really you have to use the canned air, which I'm not really a fan of. So this was just a curiosity I had a while back, and I have used it with the canned air, and it works, but it's not, I don't know. It was just fun. It was something fun to have. I probably wouldn't have bought it if I was me going back in time, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, you have the siphon feed, and then you can also get bigger. This is all gunky right now, so it's harder to tighten them all in. But you can have a bigger, larger siphon feed on the bottom of the bottle here if you're looking for like bigger clear coats or primers. Make sure you clean these out after use. So Paasche H, give it a go. Gundam marker sprayer, yeah, it's fun, but eh. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to show you something also really fun that I do for work, and it's this big old beast. Big overspray, HVLP. Using this to spray bald cap or big coats of things. it's just something fun I like to show. Since I'm showing off all the airbrushes. Now I won't use this on painting, but maybe for bigger diorama pieces I'll take it out if you're just going to prime stuff down, because this will be like 2 sprays and you're done. I mean, heck, this can be house painting in small batches, like almost touch-ups, but just a little fun thing I like to show. Also, I'm proud I got a little stand for it recently, which was a lot of fun. All right. So I printed out all your questions, and I'm going to try to answer them up with some fun. I don't really know how interesting it's going to be, but I'm going to take all my brushes out, put them here, in case I need to direct questions directly at them. So let's see. Let's see, is that off to the side enough? Now this one comes from Jeep Jeep Me8. So I don't know if it's like Jeep Meat, but Jeep Me8. Jeep ME8. Which would be the best starter for someone starting out airbrush? Well, seeing as if you're starting, you're gonna have to be getting a compressor and a few other things, but if you're just 100% starting and don't want to drop tons of money and just want to see how it feels, start with something like the MadWorks brushes. You can go a little cheaper, maybe like the was it Masters? I haven't tried them yet, but I know as far as ones I physically tried, the MadWorks, it's around 60, from 45 to 60, I believe, for the 0.3. I don't really remember them offhand. But if you do want to go up a little higher, you can start with something like the Eclipse from Iwata, or I don't really know anything past that. As far as starting, I would just say make sure you have a budget enough to be able to have a good compressor. Not like a house loud compressor. You need something a little bit smaller, going to run your, a pretty big tank, but not something super loud. Something you can adjust the pressure easily. It's more about adjusting the pressure. But as far as out the gate, this feels and works. This feels and works like a like a Iwata, like you saw in my video. So I'd say go check out my video on the MadWorks and see how you feel about that. They also have, Iwata has some bottom. Go check their website, see what their cheapest on the Eclipse is, and I believe Badger also has a version that's super cheap on the bottom there. Just try for something like a 0.3. And a 0.5 for primer. 0.3 needle for up close detailing and basing. You can still do primer with the 0.3, it just might take a little longer. So, all right, next question. Gorilla Haboob. Now, this is a lot of questions from you. So here's the first one. So are there any specific tasks better served by gravity feed, siphon feed, etc.? Yes. So what we have here are the 3 different. We have gravity, siphon, and side feed. So with side feed, it's so much easier to clean than the gravity feed, because right there I've taken off my entire bowl instantly, and I can get in there now through the needle. It still takes a little while because of cleaning at the angle, because now it's a 90-degree angle. But as far as taking the cup off and cleaning it, I believe the side feed works in the same. It's like a gravity feed. It's still working with gravity, pulling down and in, which means I can use less pressure and still have the paint flying out well. That's what the good thing about a gravity feed or a side feed. Both of these, they're letting the paint gravity work for you and spray out. So side feed, it helps because it's clearing your view here. So it's easier to see the paint you're painting, the part you're painting. Now, I don't have trouble with that. I have an angle where I can look away from where the brush is. I know where it's spraying. You've gotten used to it, but sometimes people like to see where it's aimed. But this so far is just, it works in kind of conjunction. I can adjust also the angle. So if I'm back here and I know I'm going to be doing a lot of work like this, spraying, instead of all the paint flying up here, it'll sit because I've adjusted the angle backwards now. So you could, if you're going to be doing a lot of spraying down, you adjust the pot back. I can't adjust this anywhere side to side. So this gives you better paint control because it's always having the paint's not pooling somewhere else, oddly. That's why at least I like that for the gravity feed. So gravity feed is just, you can use less air pressure, which means you can go lower, which means you can go tighter with less spatter and overspray. Now with a siphon feed, that's this, It's using high air pressure to pull the paint up, so you can't go that low. What we like to use for the Paasche is to do a nice spatter effect for makeup applications, like doing giving like skin texture. See like all this skin texture in here? The reds, the blues, the yellows, the whites. You'll take this and you'll turn it down real low and open it up real wide, and you'll just lightly spatter. So if you want a spatter effect with like rust or corrosion, for model making, like if you're doing tanks and work like that, you could get a Paasche and use the siphon feed, lower pressure, but it'll spatter. So the only difference really with the siphon feed is it's going to take more air to pull the paint up than a gravity feed. Hopefully that answered that. All right, let's go to your next one, because you have a lot of questions on there. You're asking which one's better for primer, base paint. Both of them are good for either. I would say a larger needle for primer and top coat, a smaller needle for base painting and shading. And it says, let's see, what do I use the most? I went over that previously, but these are the ones I use the most. So Renegade Chrome, the Neo from Iwata. So the TRN2 Neo for priming, basing, top coat, Renegade Chrome for base, and then the Iwata Eclipse Iwata HPC Plus for everything else. So many more questions. First time user, I already went over that, so I'd say MadWorks or anything of the cheaper. Like go to Iwata, go to Badger, and just go down to whatever their cheapest brush is that's dual action, and see if that works for you. Mostly, they're going to be good, top to bottom, they're going to work for you. And then you're asking which is best for lacquer or acrylic other. All of them are going to be good for lacquers or acrylics or enamel, but I would try to associate a certain brush for each, so you don't end up having solvents that mess with you and gunk it up, and all it means is you have to go and clean up later. So that's why I've devoted, a brush for just acrylic, and then ones that are just for lacquer and enamel. Both are going to work fine. You just got to watch out about putting in acrylic and then putting in a lacquer thinner or then an enamel without cleaning it out, because you will start to gunk up things and it will clog and you'll have to take all this apart. All right, I think that's it for you. Okay, next one. Dumbpla. I love this question. Okay, so they asked, how many airbrushes can you fit in your mouth at one time? Okay. I don't know how to answer this in serious and earnest. It's so much easier to type at you, but Dumbpla, this is really funny. So I think more than you think, but less than I wish I can fit in my mouth. But the great thing is they're so pointed, I probably could fit a lot going this way. Not so much this way. Not so much this way, or going that way. But yeah. All right. So from V21 model, have I used the Grex GGS2 ergonomic grip? No, I haven't, but I feel like it's exactly the same to this, and I have known other people that have used it in makeup. They say it's fine. They like Grex's. I'm going to be honest with you, I think they're great brushes. They look good. I mean, they look like they work well, but what I don't like is the color. I know it's weird. I think they're ugly, and I cannot even get close enough to pick one up. I don't know what it is. I don't like it. I'm sure they're great brushes. You're gonna have to look somewhere else for an answer though, because I just think they're so ugly. All right. And then this is from This Is No Zaku. What do you recommend to start airbrushing? Minimum equipment. So minimum equipment, I would say 2 airbrushes, well minimum 1 airbrush and a compressor. And then in between that, you're gonna need fittings, air fittings and cable. A lot of times the air fittings and the air line will come with the compressor, but you want to get a nice compressor that's going to be able to, unless you want it running the whole time to keep pressure up, you want something with a large enough tank that it can run without hiccups at your ideal pressure. So if you want something that can run at like 22 psi without dropping or rising up and down, and without doing too much noise, because over time that noise is going to kill your ear if you're doing for hours spraying. So what I like is I've had an Iwata compressor. It was expensive when I got it. It's probably even more expensive now, but it's a large tank with 2 outlets, so I can have 2 different pressures running at the same time. You can get a smaller tank. I'd look on New Type to see what kind of compressors they have. Then I would also look at all the websites, look at Badger, look at Iwata, see what their compressor prices are, and see if you can find one that's refurbished. You kind of roll the dice with refurbished when it comes to compressors, but a lot of the times you're going to luck out if it's from certified, because anything that can go wrong, they've refurbished, and then it'll work for another 10, 20, 30 years. So I'd say a good compressor that can maintain your pressure as you're spraying. So somewhere between 15 psi and like 25 psi. You want to kind of keep it there for most part. If you can maintain that without going up and down, then you're good. And then as far as airbrushes, whatever's in your budget, I'd say somewhere between $60 and $130 is where you want to go for that like beginning airbrush. Between like a MadWorks, lower tier, or Iwata's. For the start, just to start everything, if you can do it, get two. One that's a 0.3 needle, and then one's 0.5 just for primer, and then one for detailing and base coating. But all you need is just the one. Just one airbrush. You can do both as long as you clean out between acrylics. But if you're trying to use acrylics and lacquers and enamel, I'd get two just for that sake. But to start out, good compressor, and then a mid-range airbrush, just one at about a 0.3 needle to help you with. You can pretty much do everything with that one. You can prime, you can do all that. It just takes longer to prime because it's smaller needle. And then Incogitowo. Where do you recommend shopping from these? I'd say go ahead and try newtype.usa. You can try, if you're in the US, try to go to Badger and Iwata and see where their retailers are, to search if there's one nearby, close to you. You can go to Airbrush, Coast Airbrush. I'll put all these down in the links. Coast Airbrush is here local in California. They have all the airbrushes. They are great. If I can ever make a trip down there, I need to just pick up so much stuff. But so New Type USA, go to badgerusa.com, go to Iwata and check where their retailers are located if there's any near you. And then also try Coast Airbrush and see what you can get from there. They usually have really good prices and deals. And then let's see, we got next is Bedebahpisang. And I'm sorry I've not pronounced that right, but Bedebahpisang. And then it says how to clean. So usually I'll clean lacquers with the recommended high strength tool cleaner, and acrylics I'll use Windex and the acrylic thinners they have, like the Badger airbrush cleaner. And I'll just between when I'm just painting and I know I'm coming back, like just a regular painting session, before I finish the full thing, I'll just put some of the thinner in here, spray it through, and I'll clean the front needle area, spray it through, and I'll just let a little bit of liquid soak in there so I can move the needle back. And then the only time I'll do a full breakdown clean out is when I'm done painting until the next kit. So I'll take everything apart and I'll clean every part out. But for the most part, every time I'm cleaning, I just, at the end of each paint, I'll just put in a little bit thinner in there. I'll scrub it out with a little small brush, and then I'll spray clean, dump out, put a little more cleaner in, and just spray, so that making sure that the cup is clean of paint and there's no paint drying in there. The worst thing you can do is forget paint in here and let it dry. Then you have to take the whole thing apart, let it soak for hours, hassle. All right, so now we are on Redrocc. Easiest and quickest way to clean the brush. I think I've already talked about that. That's probably why I put your questions right next to each other. Easiest, quickest way is making sure after each paint session, put the thinner that you were using for the paint through here and clean it out. Easiest, quickest way. Now, all the other, to fully clean it, there is no quick way. You don't want to rush full breaking down. When you break it down entirely, put it on something that has edges so you don't lose a part, and make sure you keep track of every single part as you clean it. But that's only for big cleanups or if you have a clog. Most of the time I'll just spray a little bit thinner in there, spray it through. Proyecto Gundam. Reasons to upgrade. You might not have, the reasons to upgrade might just be personal. If you're trying to get finer, super fine lines, you might want to upgrade to a more expensive Badger brush to really, if you're trying to pre-shade and you want that perfect in the panel spray, you want something really close so you can turn the pressure down real low and get tight in there. So I would say upgrade to a finer line brush for detailing, or if you want to upgrade in the sense of having devoted brushes. Like this is only for primer and top coat. I put nothing else in here. Just primer, just top coat. That'd be a reason to upgrade. And then a reason to upgrade your compressor would be able to maintain a better pressure for a long time, and it won't turn on as much and be as annoying. Or it'll have multiple outlets, so you can run something at 10 psi over here and the other tube at 20 psi, and you just unhook them with quick connects. And now Kawaiibuilds. How many airbrushes would you recommend someone to have? I recommend this many. 10, no, I'm kidding. I'd recommend, at most, my recommendation, if you have to, 2. 1 for primer and top coat, 1 for base painting. The 0.5 needle or 0.3 for primer can still work, but 0.5 is better because it just opens up a lot bigger. You can cover more ground quicker, which means you have less overspray, which means you have less chance of it pooling. You just cover the whole piece and you're done. The 0.3, you can tighten it down real close and lower that air pressure, and you can get pretty fine detail lines with it. But I'd say I recommend just those two. That would be my best recommendation: a fine detail base paint and then a primer on its own. That's what I recommend. It'll be 2. If you can swing it, 3. And then if you can really swing it, any brush you want. But I'd say just 2. 2 brushes is all you really need. That's it. Last couple. Let's see, Unstablegoose. This is a good one. Okay, so Unstablegoose, you've asked, how would you clean one that is dried paint restricting its use? The trick is, it depends on what kind of paint it is. And depends what kind of brush it is. If your brush has a lot of O-ring fittings that might get damaged by lacquer thinner, make sure you take those O-ring fittings off. And now if it's so dried you can't open any of these, just soak the front. Try to keep it clear of the air, and up here in maybe just a Ziploc baggie with the thinner tightened up and let it just sit. So basically you're trying to soak all that paint with the thinner in there. So if it's a lacquer, I'd put the really good tool cleaner, some lacquer thinner in there and just let it soak. Once you can get the parts moving again and open it and take it apart carefully, then you can soak the rest of those parts, in a Tupperware tray. Just be careful with any O-ring rubber fittings and double check the manual to see if those get damaged by your thinners. But if it's dried paint and you can't use it all, you can't move the button, you can't move the trigger, you can't open any of this, you might just have to try very carefully to get that needle out, and then just try to remove all the parts you can to soak. And if you can't do that, double check on forums to see if you can soak the entire body in the thinner. Some brushes can. Or at least, like I said before, just soak the front, because this is where all your paint's going to be jammed up. So try to just soak it, in something that you can just have it submerged like that, but without letting the thinner get up here. Okay? And then over time, it'll just start loosening up. And once you can get the needle and once you can get all the parts out, it'll be easy to clean after that. You just use some brush, pipe cleaners and stuff like that, and then you'll have no problem cleaning it out. All right. This is my Iwata Studio Series compressor. It's a bit of an expensive one. I bought it a while back when I was doing makeup, so it may not be a reasonable thing for you to purchase, but I do like the double outlets, and I can have 2 different PSI ranges running on each side. And the tank's quite large, so when it does fill up, it stays up for quite a while, but it does need to cycle through the motor while I'm using it, but it maintains the pressure. It doesn't drop much, so I don't see a hiccup between PSI ranges when I'm spraying. So it is a very good compressor, but it's quite expensive. I have no idea about any other compressors, but if you have anything that operates between 15 and 30 PSI stably, that'll be what you need. Nothing else, nothing more. 60 PSI, that's too much. That's reasonable things I get on the side. So what it is, I recently found this little, it's the Iwata head tool. It's to take in here, below all this, there's a small little fitting that holds kind of the needle, the inside nozzle, that it is so small, and I've lost it so many times trying to unscrew it with pliers, but this is very light. It locks right in, and it just turns, pops it off, and it stays in there. So you can put it down in a cup or somewhere safe. So if you're having an Iwata, I don't know if this will work on other ones, but most of the needles are kind of the same. It should work as a coupler over the nozzle. So getting one of these tools, you can look, I'll put the link for a new type down there, and then you can go to iwataalso.com. One thing I always need to have, now this might be excessive, but I know I've broken needles before, so I always have a backup needle in the box, unopened, untouched, whenever I buy a brush. So I bought a new brush and I buy a needle, so I always have a spare so I don't damage it. and then have to go find a new one. And any ones that are too damaged for me to repair, I'll sand them a little and I'll use them as a cleaning tool and you know, for sculpting or something like that. But I always get a backup needle for the main brushes. A needle right there, and then my some of my Iwatas right there. That's one thing I didn't include in it, but I definitely recommend getting a backup needle when you buy the brush, so that you always have that kind of safety feature. It's a little expensive at start, but you'll have the safety feature. You won't have to go get one, you know, when it breaks, or when or if. I went over in the MadWorks tutorial, so you go ahead and look over there in the review for the MadWorks brushes, but I always put a quick connect on all my brushes. So basically my lines coming out of my compressor, which you'll see on the video, separate video, they all have the quick connect. So make sure whenever you get, like, pick a set of quick connects and only get those kind. I mean, there are ones that you need to fit each one, like Iwatas will have a different type fitting, but make sure this fitting here will work for your the female end, so that you always have, like, every airbrush has slightly different fitting here to work. Like Badger's a little smaller, the Iwata, this one was about the same, but as long as the head is the same, it'll always connect, you know, where you need it to connect. But here's the Paasches, those were different, needed to be different, just like that. That's one thing I recommend. I didn't say it before, but I recommend in your kit, get a quick connect as well. It's gonna make your life so much easier than ever having to unscrew the lines, because then you have to make sure the air is pressurized out of them, and just so you can pop on your brushes one after another, and they're really easy to take off and clean because you just unhook and go. All right, few other fun accessories. So this was just a generic, it wasn't from Iwata. It's just a really bristled, thick, stiff bristled chemical brush. I use this to clean out the bowls in between. Like when I put my thinner in, I use that as a nice cleaner in between, and then I'll, you know, put the spray through, spray it and clean it, and wipe this off. But that's my favorite brush for that. The Iwata has one, but I think there's a knockoff brands that are cheaper. But it's really just a really thick synthetic tipped brush that you can use to clean out, you know, and then clean the tip out too and all that without risking damaging. And there's definitely not going to be cotton or anything that comes off. So one of these cleaning brushes, I'll put a link down there too, is really great to have. Now this is just something fun that I've had forever. It's from Harbor Freight. I haven't really locked it up, but it's just a nice airbrush stand. So I have, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 hangers. And so I always have just sitting in the booth, in the spray booth. So it's just easy for me to pop it down, pop it out. It's one of my favorite tools. Like I'll bring this sometimes when I'm working too. You can see how messy it is, all the oversprays. But go to Harbor Freight. I'll put a link down there too. But they're one of the cheaper airbrush stands out there. They don't have a clamp. They have a clamp version, I believe, but this one I like because I can just move it almost anywhere. But that's the only other thing I wanted to add to the accessory list that I have. Maybe this was interesting to you or not. I mean, it wasn't really a tutorial about. I like my messy pile of brushes right here. It wasn't a tutorial on like showing you how they all work. I just thought I'd answer some questions. Just talk about my brushes. Maybe it worked out. I was kind of doing this all off the top of my head, but I think it's just going to be a fun. It's really, I kind of just came up. A lot of these brushes came from makeup effects, so I don't do that anymore as far as applying makeup. So these just transition. I was lucky enough to be able to transition these over into model making. So I wouldn't say you don't need this. Like I said before, you just need, you can get away with just, you know, just 2. That's pretty much it. Everything else, I mean, fine details are fun, but just a really nice, smaller needle for detailing and base painting and shading, and then a larger one, 0.5 for priming and like top coating. This is really nice because it's just a, you know, especially one of these with a really large cup, like maybe double this size, will be really cool, because then you just don't have, you never have to refill the primer. That's the one thing I like about having this cup the size that it is I don't have to come back and refill primer that much, so I can go a lot quicker without having to go back in, fill up cup, and you know, worry about it worried about it draining out on me, then have to go get it, fill it up again. So, and this is also much more comfortable for spraying. Like sometimes I'll spray here, switch my fingers, like just to make it more comfortable. Like I'll spray with that, and then I'll switch that. So I'm not using one finger the whole time, because that'll kill you. The repetitive movement. So I try to mix it up between those two. That's why I like this, but these are pretty much what I use almost 100% of the time. Just these two, I'll say it again, the Iwata HPC Plus with crown tip, and the TRN2 Neo Iwata. Neo for Iwata. It's kind of a weird setup, but yeah. So that's pretty much that. And I think that's it for this video, and thank you so much for watching. Remember to please check out my Patreon if you want to see any of my work in progress that I don't put on Instagram, or if you want to check out some of the newer videos I'm making for the Mr. Silicone Barrier Release Agent. Finding a US-based comparable product, something that works the same. And I think I found one. It may not be your cup of tea. It's not really so much of it's a really nice chipping technique with the Mr. Barrier, and I think I found a US release that is very similar, if not the same, just needs some tweaking to make it work. So if you want to check that video out, you're gonna have to go to Patreon for that for now. Maybe in a couple months it'll be out in public, but I really like to keep it over there. If you're interested, I'm trying my best to get as much on the Patreon as possible. There's a few exclusive things, but if you're interested, please check it out. Try it for a month. If you don't like it, I'll try to do better next time, and maybe you come back and there'll be more stuff. Thank you so much. Bye.